everyone. Good evening, and welcome to the 2026 the President's Own United States Marine Band Sousa Season Opener. My name is Hannah Davis, and please help me welcome to the podium to conduct and our guest concert moderator, the director of the President's Own, Lieutenant Colonel Ryan Nowlin, and Loras John Schissel.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to do things a little differently for our opening of our Sousa concert this afternoon. Between 1776 and 1931, we had no national anthem, and it wasn't until 1931 when President Hoover signed into law making the Star-Spangled Banner our anthem, and in 1918, John Philip Sousa made the arrangement that we're going to hear now. So I hope you all join in singing John Philip Sousa's arrangement of the Star-Spangled Banner. Well, thank you for coming out and joining us in this Sousa Spectacular this afternoon. It's the opening concert of the Marine Band's Spring Concert Series. As I said, I'm Loras John Schissel, and I work in the music division at the Library of Congress, and I'm going to be sort of your tour guide as we salute this great American composer. And I'm just going to give you a few little facts about John Philip Sousa. But before I do that, we're sort of in a sort of triple threat salute this year. America celebrates its 250th birthday on Independence Day of this year. This national treasure you see behind me, the President's Own, the United States Marine Band, will celebrate its 228th birthday on July 11th. And the United States Marine Corps, they're always first at everything. America celebrates 250. The Marine Corps is going to celebrate 251. But I'm just going to, before we play the opening number, I'm just going to give you a little thumbnail sketch about this man that we're saluting this afternoon, John Philip Sousa. His music is so familiar to us that we sort of forget there was actually a person who had a full life and composed all of this music that we sort of sometimes take for granted. But John Philip Sousa is a native Washingtonian. He was born in 1854 to immigrant parents. His father was João Antonio Sousa, later anglicized to Sousa. Sousa with an S, not with a Z. His mother was Marie Elizabeth Trinkhaus, and she was Bavarian, and Sousa was third of 9 children. You can still go down to 502 7th Street in Southeast and see the house where he grew up. The famous one is down the street where he was born. But his father enlisted him. His father was Antonio Sousa, who played trombone in the United States Marine Band, this ensemble. And when Sousa threatened to run away to the circus, his father woke him up that same morning very early, walked him down to the commandant of the Marine Corps, and enlisted him as an apprentice musician. And from 1868 to 1875, Sousa was an apprentice musician, a band boy, but got out of the service as a third-class musician. He returned just a few years later in 1880 to become the youngest ever leader of a service band. He became leader of the Marine Band in 1880 and served till 1892. I might add, as a Navy man, Sousa enlisted at the age of 63 from 1917 to 1919 during World War I. His total service was 19 years, 8 months, and 10 days. In 1892, he retired from the President's own United States Marine Band and started his own civilian concert band, which played until his death in 1932. During that time, the Sousa Band played 15,623 documented concerts. 2 concerts a day, 7 days a week, 11 months out of the year. The band made 1,770 recordings, and in 1911, Sousa and 65 musicians made a tour of the world, covering over 47,000 miles in 352 days. Sousa was a musical superstar, but he did it the old-fashioned way. He did it in person. The New York Times in 1901 said that Sousa's face was more recognizable to people than the President of the United States. By the 1920s, he was a national institution. And when the Sousa Band would come and play in your town, think about this today, they would let school out so that the kids could go to the matinee concert. Dr. William D. Ravelli, the longtime conductor of the University of Michigan Band, told me once that he was living in Joliet, Illinois, and the Sousa Band was scheduled to arrive in town at 6 a.m. that morning. Now, if this would have been some other ensemble, no big deal. There were 5,000 people waiting to greet Sousa and the Sousa Band at 6 a.m. in Joliet, Illinois. He remains our national treasure. I made mention of the fact that after he got out of the Marine Corps in 1875 until he took over the band in 1880, he was a very successful violinist and a composer for theater. And these things took place after he moved to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. In 1876, he was out on the road with a show that he had written, but he quit the show so that he could be back in Philadelphia to play for the centennial of the United States of America. And he played first violin in the Centennial Orchestra, conducted by a French composer named Jacques Offenbach. Philadelphia was always sort of, Sousa said, his spiritual home. I might add that he met and married his wife there. In 1926, he returned to Philadelphia to celebrate America at 150. And he wrote a special march, and it's the march we're going to open this concert with. It's called the Sesquicentennial Exposition. There's a fellow named Joachim Miller. He was an American poet, he was an author, and he was a frontiersman. In his lifetime, he was known as the poet of the Sierras. His poem, Columbus, at the time, this would be about 1890 through probably the 1920s, his poem, Columbus, was the most memorized and recited poem for school children of any poem until we got Listen, My Children, and You Shall Hear the Midnight Ride of Paul Revere. But besides his literary pursuits, Miller's other occupations included a mining camp cook, he was a lawyer, he was a judge, he was a newspaper writer, he was a Pony Express rider, and he was a convicted horse thief. He lived in Washington for a time, and for those of you who happen to get into Rock Creek Park, you can see his cabin there. It's still preserved in Rock Creek Park. But he was also an author of plays and a very good friend of John Philip Sousa. And in the early 1880s, he wrote a play called Tally Ho and asked Sousa to write the incidental music for it and some songs for it. And the piece we're going to open with now, the overture to Joachim Miller's Tally Ho. That's how it would happen at a Sousa concert. The band would play a classical number, and then if the audience applauded well enough, Sousa would turn around and do one of his very own marches or a popular song of the day as an encore. The encore that the band played just now was from Sousa's 1896 big hit Broadway show called El Capitan. And El Capitan was a starring vehicle for sort of the Fred Astaire and Bert Lahr and Gene Kelly of his day all rolled into one. People don't remember his name now, but he was the man who popularized the poem Casey at the Bat. You remember, for there is no joy in Mudville, mighty Casey has struck out. He was so popular during El Capitan with Casey at the Bat that he would come out at intermission just before the start of the third act, and he would have to repeat that poem in its entirety in costume. Now, I mentioned the fact about a Sousa concert. An evening concert by Sousa's band oftentimes was about 3 hours long with an intermission. People got their money's worth when they went to a Sousa concert. But it was about 1/3 classical music, 1/3 kind of lighter fare and Sousa marches, and 1/3 of the concert was devoted to virtuoso solos. And Sousa had, because he paid well and because of his popularity, had some of the finest virtuosos and singers that you can think of performed during the entire 39-year history of the Sousa band. Now, the 19th century in which Sousa grew up in was the great era of the virtuoso soloist. Oftentimes, it was either a violinist or a pianist. And besides the requirement of having impeccable virtuosity on your instrument, either the fiddle or the piano, one other requisite, you had to have big hair, lots and lots of big hair. Now, Marine Corps regulations prohibit us from having big hair for our soloist this afternoon, but he certainly plays in the style of these 19th century composers and arrangers and virtuosi. In this, we're going to play the Fantasy from Carmen by Pablo di Sarasate, who was sort of the Jascha Heifetz of his day. And one of the requirements of these virtuosi was they had to be able to either compose or arrange their own solos. Sarasate decided to take melodies from the most popular opera of its time, Carmen by Bizet, and make a fantasy showing off all not only the tunes, but showing off the virtuosity of his instrument. And we're going to hear that played not as a violin solo this afternoon, but as a clarinet solo. And the clarinet soloist for today's performance is Gunnery Sergeant Sam Ross. He's originally from Russellville, Arkansas. He earned his bachelor's degree in music from the University of Arkansas and his master's degree in clarinet performance from the University of North Texas. His military career began in 2012, serving as a musician in our great West Point band prior to joining the President's Own in September of 2018. So, would you give a warm welcome to our slightly short-haired but incredibly virtuoso Sam Ross. I might just add that Sam Ross was joined by his compatriots, the entire clarinet section, playing the Flight of the Bumblebee of Nikolai Rimsky-Korsakov. You know, the ensemble that you see in front of you here, the symphonic band, the military band, is a recent sort of addition to the musical organizations that we have. It's much younger than the orchestra. And the Marine Band itself, while being the oldest continuously running professional musical ensemble in the United States, was a bit of an anomaly. If you think about the time of the Civil War, most bands were all brass instruments. And the Marine Band has historically been a brass and woodwind ensemble with percussion. And if you look at music publishing in the United States, the publication of music for symphonic band is a fairly recent thing, really from the 1870s, which means all that time prior to the 1870s, if the Marine Band wanted to play something, the leader of the Marine Band had to sit down with a piano copy of the thing and make a score and then write out by hand each part for each instrument. At the Library of Congress, we have the papers, the archive of Francisco Maria Scala, who was Abraham Lincoln's bandmaster. He was the conductor of the President's Own from about the time of President Buchanan all the way through Ulysses S. Grant. And literally, it's thousands and thousands of pages of handwritten music that the band played from. That tradition has continued all the way up to this very day. The Colonel does his own arrangements if there isn't one available. And probably one of the most famous arrangers or transcribers for this unique ensemble happens to be the conductor emeritus of this band, Colonel John R. Bourgeois. And just a little bit about Colonel Bourgeois. He was the 25th director of this ensemble. He joined the United States Marine Corps in 1956 and served 8 presidents, from President Eisenhower all the way through President Clinton. During his time as conductor of the Marine Band, they made their first overseas tour, and in 1990, they made their historic tour of the then Soviet Union. We're going to hear one of Colonel Bourgeois' brand new, never-before-heard transcriptions of a march by Hector Berlioz from his opera called The Trojans, La Troyenne. And so I think you're in for a real treat. Just on a personal level, Colonel Bourgeois is a dear, dear friend, but he's also my hero. So, without further ado, would you welcome the conductor emeritus of the President's Own, the United States Marine Band, Colonel John R. Bourgeois. Colonel Bourgeois and the band played Semper Fidelis, Always Faithful, the official march of the United States Marine Corps. I might add that throughout Sousa's life, newspapermen would say, of course, your best march, Stars and Stripes Forever, and Sousa always said, it is not. The best march I ever wrote was a march I wrote for my beloved United States Marine Corps, Semper Fidelis, Always Faithful. With that, we'll take a 15-minute intermission. See you back soon, folks.
Established by an act of Congress in 1798, the President's Own United States Marine Band is America's oldest continuously active professional musical organization. Its mission is unique, to provide music for the President of the United States and the Commandant of the Marine Corps. In addition to its White House mission, the President's Own performs concerts and supports ceremonies, events, and educational programs throughout the Washington, D.C. area. Every fall, the band performs throughout a portion of the continental United States during its national concert tour, a tradition initiated in 1891 by the band's legendary 17th director, John Philip Sousa. For more than 200 years, the Marine Band has had a front row seat to history and served as an integral part of events that have helped shape the nation's identity and unique artistic culture while bringing music to the White House and to the American people.
How do I feel about the Marine Band performing my compositions? Well, every composer would be very happy to have any of their pieces performed by the Marine Band.
What was my experience like recording with the Marine Band? It was exhilarating, exciting, scary at moments.
The Marine Band is like the quintessential wind ensemble of the country. It's a treat for a composer to hear his music played virtually perfectly. And that's what happened today. It was just a treat.
It's incredible to write for the Marine Band, and it's incredible as a Marine to be asked to write music for such a momentous occasion. This is the 250th birthday of the Marine Corps, and with that I was trying to illustrate orally the next 250 years and what we have to look forward to. The fact that I've gotten to write music for what, and I'm a little biased being a Marine myself, but what I truly believe is the finest ensemble in the world is the greatest honor of my lifetime.
We have moments when we're writing that say, oh, I can't believe I thought of this idea. And then we have moments when our music is being played, and this was one of those moments. It was just incredible.